We can move to Dick Walker here. Dick, can you tell us a little bit about your early life leading up to going into the military and how you got into the military? And
Born 1922, September 11th, as we still got September 11th.
Yeah.
And then my father passed away when I was 12 years old, and I became a farmer, and my mother and I both. And we kept the taxes paid. I remember getting $78 together for pay the taxes, and it took all summer to do that, because I'd go out and work for the other farmers a little bit. And I kept 8 head of cattle, went to high school.
Right up the homestead that you have right now.
Right,
That same
I was
place.
born in that homestead.
Yep, up on Waterley Falls
I
Road.
really haven't left yet. So we kept the farm together anyway, so it was a great thing to get the taxes paid. And from then on, I got greetings from the President of the United States and went to Manchester, took a physical. And by the way, I went from Rockingham Junction up on the train.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided I was eligible. We went on from there to be drafted. Went to Portsmouth. My family took me down. I kissed them all goodbye with tears in my eyes, which is not hard to do now. And I went to Devon's to Miles Standish. That was in Connecticut. And took my basic training, learned to do what everybody had basic training. They could give an order to any soldier, and no matter where he was, he'd do what they said. If it's right shoulder arms, they could do it. Then I went to Boston and loaded ships there for about 3 months.
You were a crane operator.
I was a crane operator, and I had a lot of good help from the civilians that were there, longshoremen. And I could run a crane just as good as they could. I could swing a boom around and stop the load where they wanted it. I didn't mind that. And then we left from Boston, went to Scotland, landed there, came down to England. It got me lost. Where else we went? And finally, they got us ready to go for the invasion.
You trained in England for a while, then went over.
I was in unloading mystery tanks that were secret, and we unloaded those tanks. And they were supposed to be amphibious. But when we got them in the water was so rough on D-Day, they sank. And that's why we had such a terrible time on the beach. And it wasn't a lack of much else. They needed gasoline for the tanks, so I went over on a load of gasoline through the artillery and range and everything else. And I remember I was under a shield on a ship. I put my finger in my mouth, held it up. They said, "Here's Walker, what's he doing out there with his finger up in the air?" Well, I was looking to see which way the wind was blowing, because I knew that thing was going to blow up.
You wanted to be away from it, yeah.
I was going to go into the wind. So I landed on D-Day. I went in also with the gasoline on a amphibious tank truck.
You stayed out, you floated around for quite a while before.
They loaded us 3 days before the invasion. And there was a bad storm, and we bobbed around out there on this small freighter. It was English. So when he said go, we were all ready to go. Because like he said, we all were seasick, and we dared. The captain of the ship was English, and we called him all kinds of names. And we pleaded with him to land us. But when we landed, I landed on what they call a duck. And it took till that night to get things quieted down on the beach. But we made it.
What was it like when you came into shore?
It was I don't know what hell is like, but must be close to that.
There were shells going off everywhere around you. The water was boiling.
Everywhere. Well, the ships on the land, on the ocean, were shooting over our heads, and the Germans up on the hill were shooting over our heads.
What do you think of at a moment like that? What were your thoughts at that moment?
Put your head in, you fool.
You didn't have time to think, probably, right? You just were
Oh,
in the
yeah,
middle.
time enough to think.
Did you?
This is no place for me.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
You were wondering if you would actually survive it, right?
And we lost a lot of men because when they disembarked from the ships, we had a Mae West lifesaver. The lifesaver eventually, as you wore it, slipped down, got down. You had about 50, 60 pounds on your back, and they stepped into the water, and a lot of the men could not swim. And they panicked, and they squeezed. It was the lifesaver, and your heavy part was your feet up in the air. And I saw many a men, just the feet up in the air, pulled up. I pulled one man out, but
Because they pushed the lifesaver and it inflated and they.
well, it had
kept them
the
upside
CO2 cartridges in them or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
And it had a lever. You could squeeze the lever,
yeah.
and it would blow up.
flipped
They
them
called them Mae West. They were supposed to be worn under your arms,
Oh.
and it would work well.
Oh, yeah, water
But as
wings.
it worked down and was not blown up, when you hit that, it just popped out. And we lost a lot of men just by accident like that. We lost Mr. Vinsovich right up the street. I visited his grave when I found it. And then I went from there, from the beach, to buy the 40 and 8, which wasn't room for 40, and I don't know how the horses made out.
They could get 8 in there.
Just about, I guess. But we were riding the train in World War II. Cars, freight cars. They weren't modern of any type. They were really hooked up by a buckle
Yeah,
and a spring on each corner.
2 chains.
And as they put on the brakes, the thing would all go together, and it got them all compressed, and that back down the line.
It was good with the train smoke, too,
Yeah.
the coal smoke. We put a mask on.
So from there, I went by 40 and 8 to
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Doc, for coming.
Antwerp. And some of kind of comical things was that we were loaded alphabetically, which Doc would know that you fall in line alphabetically for pay or whatever you had. So with a W, I knew where to go. I was at the end of the train. I said, this is a pretty good place to be. Engine's got to go in first. And we went right into Antwerp because the trolley car tracks were the same gauge as the railroad tracks. And what did they do but pull up on the siding very nicely and back it down, and I was the first car in to Antwerp. Thought I was going to be last, and I was the first one in that car with the rest of the 40 men. And, at that point, the Germans were on the run, and the only thing that we had to fear at all was the V-2 and the V-1 planes that kept coming over. They shortened the lines tremendously by opening Antwerp up, the port of Antwerp. And there was a 21-foot tide in over in Europe, and the English Channel was one of the things I could not believe, but it was rough and it was mean and it was cold, and we went. Most of the ports were on a river. They brought boats in on high tide and then closed the lock, and then we unloaded them from there. So outside of the being continuously bombed with these things, they wanted to, Germany wanted to get Antwerp blown up so that water wouldn't come in. That would stop it.
So we couldn't ship anything through Antwerp and into
Right.
inland.
It shortened the supply lines tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
And
There was an instance where you said that there was German infiltrators coming into Antwerp dressed as Americans.
that was
What was that like?
during the Battle of the Bulge. They confiscated enough American stuff so they had 6x6s and Germans dressed in American uniforms that they were going to kick us out for the Battle of the Bulge. And you had to stop the 6x6s and then ask them, because the driver was always able to speak English. You have to ask them stupid questions. Who are the Red Sox and something like that, you know. And they couldn't answer normal small talk. Or who's your mother? Who's your grandmother? They would stumble over minor questions. And
Did you have an incident like that happen to you?
yes, I was with a group that stopped them, but the Germans were very well. If you shot the lieutenant, you got the whole outfit. I've seen 200 Germans marching down, hands on their heads, and one American walking along. He said, "Look what I got." Yeah, you got them. All right. What are you going to do with them?
Because their officer got killed and they didn't have any leadership.
They're very easily, after the initial balls, shooting and everything, then they were very calm and peaceful, and they wanted a comrade.
It was better to get captured by an American than a Russian.
Oh, yes. It was much
You
better.
knew.
Yep. So,
But that was after Antwerp, the Bulge, or was that part of?
yes, it's Christmas.
So it was a few months after you had initially landed in Antwerp that.
We landed in Christmas in November or something there, and it was Christmas Eve that the Battle of the Bulge was pulled, because they knew that all Americans would be drunk. And they had already replaced the front lines up in there, and they put a lot of young soldiers up in there, and they didn't have the courage to hold their positions, which was too bad. So they did start to come through, but thank God for the Air Force. And it was snowing and cold, and they couldn't, our Air Force couldn't get in there because of the fog and the clouds. But once that cleared, they made mincemeat of those people up there. It was hooray, you know, here we go. Was so happy to have them.
Were you in one of the foxholes at that time?
No, not in Antwerp, because you could see these planes, the bombs coming. You could stand here like that and see them come, unmanned. Nobody in them. When they run out of gas, about a ton of explosive went off. So you could, if you saw one coming, you could run if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Better than sitting still.
Yeah, that's the B-2 rocket.
Yeah. So that we got to get rid of that pretty well.
So where did you, after the Battle of the Bulge, where did you go from there?
I went into France, back into France, right where World War I was fought, in Shadow Theory and Reims, France, and Epernay, and
Were you on with it?
then I was posted to a railroad outfit that was redeploying deploying soldiers to go across the other side of Japan over there. So we handled a lot of troops on the camps. Each one of the camps that we kept filling them up were called cigarette camps. Lucky Strike, and by a code, you know, you have to refer to them something. So they called them cigarette camps.
And from there, you
From there,
you got orders for coming back
I-
home?
got Forbes Getchell's points, collected them up. I thought I'd never get home, but I had enough points so I could.
Did you ever, you probably didn't even think about going back home.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh,
Every day,
Every day,
every day I thought I was going home.
getting out of there,
Never
huh?
so homesick in my life.
Homesick.
From day one,
Yeah.
I,
With all
I
those
did my
battles,
job all the way through, and I did it well. But I was,
crane operator all the way through.
yes, and I was
Yeah.
really homesick.
How was it when you came home? Did you,
Oh, we whistled and I shouted and I called him by name.
you came back on a troop ship into,
I came back on a converted Liberty ship that had bunks 5 high.
oh yeah, lovely bunks. They
Well,
got just about this far away from you.
Yes,
you were a sergeant.
I
Right.
was a sergeant.
Did you get the top bunk?
Yes, I did. I thought that's the place for me, and the helmet's over there. The helmet was a great thing, you know. It had a liner in it, for the people that don't know. And you could take the helmet off, and you could use it for many things. And one of them was seasickness.
Yeah.
You could shave in it very nicely. That worked well.
Use some of that hot coffee. It wasn't worth drinking.
The rations that Forbes talks about looked like Cracker Jack boxes,
Yeah.
but they were covered with wax, and you couldn't impregnate them with water or anything else. They were, and we ate a lot of those.
K ration.
How was it?
Hay rations is right.
How was it when you came back home? What did it feel like? Were your folks there to
Free.
meet
I
you?
was free.
Yeah. All the you were through. All you guys, all you went through, and then you finally found yourself, wow, I made it.
Yeah, I did, and I came home in the snowstorm too. I don't know if it's the same one that he had or not. But my train stopped next to it. It was supposed to, and there was a lot of snow, snowing hard, and we were 2 or 3 buddies talking, and they said, "Hey, this is Exeter." I said, "I'm getting off." And the conductor was on the side. I said, "You can't get off here." I said, "You can't stop me either." And I throwed my bag off and dove in the snowbank. The train just slowed down because they knew they couldn't start again if they did. When my folks came to meet me, I called them and they were ready.
You got off at Rockingham Junction?
No, Exeter.
Exit.
Exeter. You could have jumped off at Rockingham Junction.
No, you couldn't. You're going too
You're
fast.
going too
Yeah,
fast.
there you go. Oh, you went that crazy, right? Yeah, you wouldn't want to be that brave.
Yeah.
I was just thinking you could have saved yourself a little bit.
But it wasn't funny, any part of it.
No.
even being here today brings back so many memories. I don't sleep well last night or the night before, or whatever it is.
Did you know buddies, I mean, from Newmarket that were in the military with you at the time over there?
There was one man, his name was Massey, and I never found it out. We were coming home.
He was at D-Day with you?
Yes, my whole outfit went through in D-Day. I don't know if there's a picture up there, but over the helmet there was a half-moon crescent stripe painted. We painted that on there so we could recognize each other. It wasn't my idea, but I do have a couple pictures of showing them some of the boys coming ashore.
And you knew this one guy named Massey was from town here.
It was the only one I knew from town.
Okay.
Gee, I did a good job.
Did a
Let me
great.
go.
Oh, you're not off the hook yet. But you covered all the points, and I didn't have to say anything actually. So your family met you at when you came home.
Yep, they
Mother,
did.
Dad, your mom, and now you have brothers and sisters as well. that were there?
I have 5 half-brothers and 1 half-sister that have passed away since, and 1 full brother, 1 full sister that have both passed away. I'm the last one. So